Hello everyone and welcome to lesson 3 of the first module in your professional diploma in social media marketing. You have made it to week 2, which means that you are one step closer to social media marketing success. Thank you again for choosing to study with Shaw Academy. I hope that you are ready to learn about deciphering your target audience. Let's get this lesson started with an interesting fact. Did you know that 56% of consumers believe that businesses need to have a deeper understanding of their needs? This is more than half of your potential audience who doesn't believe that you understand them. And if they feel that way, the likelihood that they will purchase your product or use your service is drastically decreased. I have not changed my name since the last lesson, but I am Jessica Hanna and I am your course educator. I have a cool little quote here which says, "A brand is no longer what we tell the consumer it is what consumers tell each other it is." And that is by Scott Cook, who is the Intuit founder. So this is obviously due to the fact that we can review products and services, we can post comments on social media, and it is not like traditional marketing where we would tell people what they wanted to hear. Now they are telling us what they want. Let's just quickly run through the housekeeping tips. So if you haven't downloaded the app already, you can do that onto your phone or tablet. Remember to set the allow notification so that you don't miss any lessons. When you open the app, you'll be able to see a useful reminder countdown clock until your next lesson starts. And if you click on courses, you can view more information about the current course that you are on. If you ever miss a lesson, you are able to go back and watch a recording or to join the class using the red watch recording button. And remember that the key to success is effort and commitment. We are here to make it as easy as possible for you to consume the course content at your convenience. All you have to do is don't drop out. You will see continuous improvement with every lesson and be one step closer to achieving your goals. And if you have any questions, our AI chatbot Morpheus is here to answer them. You can ask questions and type your answers to any questions that I pose to you in the chat box in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. You can chat with Morpheus and you can also chat with your classmates. Remember that interacting with your classmates will help you with your understanding and knowledge of the course content. Please remember to rate the responses that you get so that we can improve them going forward and give you the best Shaw Academy experience. And if you have any other queries, you can email us on support@shawacademy.com. Let's quickly put Morpheus to the test. So who are you currently targeting through social media marketing? In our case, you are our target audience. You might be a business owner who wants to start social media marketing, or you may want to scale up your social media marketing efforts. You might also be an industry professional who wants to improve your social media marketing efforts. So tell me, what kind of person are you targeting at the moment? If you don't know, don't worry. By the end of this lesson, you definitely will. So in lesson 2, we learned what a social media platform is. You learned about the different categories of social media platforms. You also learned about popular social media channels that are used by users as well as by businesses. And we looked at some of the facts and demographics for the top 10 platforms that we use for business, as well as how to choose a social media channel. So now that you know all of that, let's take a look at how to decipher your target audience. Well done on making it this far. I hope that the lessons have been valuable and I hope that you're looking forward to learning more. In lesson 3, you will learn what a target audience is, why it's important to have an in-depth understanding of your target audience, how to identify your target audience, as well as the different generations using social media, segmenting your audience into buyer personas, the elements of a buyer persona, and we'll look at the buyer journey. In lesson 4, we will look at what is involved in creating a social media strategy and the various elements that we need to put together. Let's jump into the juicy bits. We're going to cover some marketing terms that you will hear throughout this course and within this lesson. First up, we have digital natives. And this is a person who was brought up during the age of digital technology and is familiar with computers and the internet from an early age. You will also hear upsell, and this is when you persuade a customer to buy something additional or more expensive to what you are already selling. Then we have a conversion, and this is the action that a user takes when they interact with content that requires them to take a specific action that you have deemed valuable to your business, such as an online purchase or even signing up to a newsletter. And then we have leads, and this is an individual or organization that has shown an interest in your product or service by sharing their contact information with you. We will talk about segmentation. This is also referred to as market segmentation and is the activity of dividing a broad consumer or business market consisting of existing and potential customers into subgroups of consumers based on shared characteristics. The term customer-centric will be brought up a lot, and this is an approach to doing business that focuses on providing a positive customer experience both at the point of sale and after the sale. You will hear brand interactions, and this is the process of forming emotional or rational attachments between a consumer and a brand. And finally, we have purchase drivers, and these are aspects that make your product or service more appealing in order to drive purchases. So, what exactly is a target audience? According to my definition, a target audience is a group of people defined by certain demographics and behaviors. But why is it so important for a business to understand who they are targeting? There are a few reasons for this. A one-size-fits-all marketing approach and sales approach will not work, as your product or service can appeal to many different buyers who have a variety of different needs and various goals. So by clearly identifying the purchase decision maker and how your product or service helps them, it becomes easier to catch their attention with personalized content. 90% of consumers find personalization appealing, and 80% of consumers say they are more likely to do business with a company that offers personalized approaches. So you need to know your audience in order to do business. Knowing your audience can also save you money. If you know who your audience is, then you don't have to waste time or money creating irrelevant content that is not going to convert. It may take time and experimentation to find out what exactly they like and what they respond to, but once you know, you can then start focusing and honing in your efforts on creating the specific content that works. Also, having a comprehensive understanding of your audience can help you to attract high-quality leads. High-quality leads are more likely to convert than low-quality leads. A blanket approach means that you will attract a whole range of people, but of those people, how many are actually likely to convert? You could be wasting time, effort, and budget on attracting people that would never convert in the first place. You can also avoid chasing your customers away by creating targeted content. 51% of consumers believe that brands send too much irrelevant content, which is likely to drive them to another brand. But let's take a look at what is involved in identifying your target audience. So we have target audience demographic factors. This means discovering what kind of people are most likely to be interested in your product or service. You can break your target audience down into different demographic factors, such as gender. We are all motivated by different things, so the way that you might position your product to a female consumer would not be the same way that you would position it to a male consumer. We'd also look at age, because the language and imagery that you might use to target an 18-year-old would not be the same as targeting a 65-year-old. You should also be looking at location. Different regions have different cultures as well as various colloquialisms that you would use, and the languages are not the same. The understanding is not the same. So you need to be very aware of, if you're targeting someone in Africa versus if you're targeting someone in France, what the differentiation there would be and how to approach people based on culture. You also want to look at education, because the way that you might address a lawyer is not the same way that you would address someone in college. If you have a lawyer, you know that you can probably use, or someone with a PhD, you could use certain jargon, whereas someone in college would not understand that particular jargon. And alongside that, you want to look at what their profession is. So if your product or service targets them in a professional sense, then you want to use words that position you as a thought leader and as an expert in your field. Then you also want to look at what their income is. You don't want to be marketing your product or service to someone who cannot afford it. So knowing that they can afford and are willing to buy your product and service or spend their money on that is extremely important. And finally, we'd look at marital status. People are also motivated by different things, and the motivations of a single male studying at university is very different to the motivations of a married male with 2.5 kids and a white picket fence house. So these are really factors that will contribute to what content you create, as well as what platforms you will use, in conjunction with what we saw in lesson 2. But there are other factors that you need to take into consideration. So we have psychographic factors, and these include personality. So we all have different personality traits, which means that we will respond to different information or advertising. We also look at lifestyle. If I have a butchery, I'm definitely not going to be marketing my product or service to a vegan. You want to look at the opinions and attitudes. So depending on how they see life and what their facts and opinions are, you want to target them on those specific emotional key points and also solve their problems. And finally, you'll look at their interests and hobbies. So either from your product or service, based on their interests and hobbies, you can upsell to them, but your product or service might specifically target what their interests are or what their hobbies are. So all of these aspects will affect whether your potential consumer will purchase your product or not, as well as how to target them in order to drive them to make that purchase that you want. Our target audience can also be broken down into known and unknown audiences. If you have a business that has been running for a while, then you will probably have a known audience. These are people that you have had some kind of contact with already. Maybe they've visited your website, maybe they've signed up for a newsletter or even made a purchase. But if you are a new business, then the likelihood that you have an unknown audience is quite high. For both businesses, there will be an unknown audience, and the unknown audience is someone that you know would be interested in your product or service, or they would match your current audience, but they don't know about your product or service yet, and they also have not made contact. So let's look at how we might go about creating your ideal target audience for a brand new business. If I am trying to sell this TV, I want to analyze my product or service. So you can analyze your product or service by asking yourself the following questions. What is your product or service? Why would someone want this product or service? What are the features of your product? And what are the benefits of each of those features? And then who will benefit from this and why? And how niche is your product or service? So if I'm looking at the smart TV, my product or service is obviously a smart TV. Why would someone want this? Well, maybe they want it because it's extremely convenient to have. You can do a lot. You can browse the internet, check the weather, watch various channels. You can watch YouTube off your TV. You can look through photos, email. So your TV now basically becomes like a super laptop. The features are obviously maybe that it's fast and that it's convenient and that it connects to Wi-Fi. The benefits of that are that you don't have to sit around waiting for anything. You can chat with people right where you are. And who will benefit from this? Well, we're most likely to go with a more tech-savvy audience. So we're looking at our digital natives, and they tend to be younger, and they tend to want the best and the latest. But remember that they also have to be able to afford this TV. So maybe I want to offer them a lay-by. And then how niche is this product or service? Well, it's not niche at all, which is great. So we know that we have a lot of consumers who would be interested in this product. But we can also analyze who our target audience is through our competitors. So if we look at our competitors and we check out their social media pages, we can start to see what kind of content they produce. We can look at what platforms they're using and align that with what we know about our social media platforms, and then see if there are any markets that they are overlooking. So maybe I do want to target someone who is in an older age range and maybe not too familiar with technology. And the way that I would approach that situation is, again, for the convenience, and also I would probably highlight the fact that this technology is extremely easy to learn and it'll keep them entertained because they can target or they can do multiple things on here. So that's just a really bad example of how I would market this product or service. But aside from that, we can also look at identifying your audience through the various generations. So we have baby boomers who are aged 54 to 72 years old. We have Generation X, which is 35 to 54 years old. We have millennials who are 22 to 37 years old. And then we have Gen Z who are 0 to 21 years old. Let's take a closer look at each one of these individually, what separates them, and also how to target them. So first up, we have the baby boomers. And baby boomers are commonly defined as those who were born between 1946 and 1964. The reason for this name originates from the increased birth rates during this period. Users who fall under this age category and who are active on the internet and social media are also referred to as silver surfers. This generation has embraced social media, but as a means of communication, and they also use online platforms for product research. They spend about an hour and 12 minutes on social media daily. Their favorite social media platform is Facebook, of course. As we learned in the last lesson, Facebook has the most users out of all social media platforms online, and they are much less likely to be on Twitter and Instagram. Baby boomers are also 19% more likely to share content than any other generation, not only from their friends and family, but also from brands. However, 30% of baby boomers will unfollow a brand that is too spammy, which is why it's important to know your target audience. So how do we target this generation? First of all, they have a high level of brand loyalty. If you can prove to them that you have a high quality product and good service, then you will have a very loyal customer base. You can also upsell to this generation. Baby boomers are generally willing to spend more if they have the right information and find value in what they are purchasing. So it's easier to sell to an existing customer than to gain new customers. Also, offering rewards to this generation is extremely useful, especially if you're looking at providing cashbacks on purchases. Because this generation is seen to not only be buying for themselves, but they're buying for children and grandchildren as well. So when they're shopping online, they're using their credit card and they're not spending menial amounts. They're spending large amounts. So giving them a little bit of a cashback as a reward is extremely effective in this case. And then also tactical advertising. Again, we've spoken about personalization in detail. I've mentioned it a lot of times. I've drilled it into your head. I hope that you're not having nightmares about personalizing your marketing content. But this generation is more receptive to traditional advertising and sees Facebook ads as spammy, but they do go online to research products. So when targeting this audience through ads, make sure that they are relevant and that the content is informative and highlights your unique selling point. And then finally, online sales. This generation is willing to purchase online, but remember that your checkout process needs to be seamless. They did not grow up with technology, and this is completely a new situation to them. So a multi-channel approach will also assist here. This generation is influenced by social media, but they will check a company's website and they respond well to email. When you are driving baby boomers to purchase online, first check whether your grandmother would be able to do it. Unless your grandmother's really tech savvy and she knows what's going on. But, go test it out in an old age home. I'm sure they'll enjoy it and offer them a reward in return for testing out your service or your checkout process. And then we have Generation X. This generation is also known as Gen X, and they are typically born between 1965 and 1980. They grew up during a period of shifting societal values, and interestingly enough, the X also refers to an unknown variable or a desire not to be defined. So this generation tends to hold the most business leadership positions. So this generation spends approximately 1 hour 49 minutes on social media a day. And like the baby boomer generation, they mostly use social media to connect and research. They are also less likely to share their personal lives on social media. As the kids of the counterculture, they value their independence and are not fond of advertising. 56% of Gen Xers say that there is too much advertising on social media channels that they use. They also tend to do a lot of research before making a purchase decision. 68% make their buying decisions based on online reviews. So you want to make sure that you're getting those reviews in from users or from consumers. And while this generation was quick to adopt social media, they don't experiment with new channels. So Facebook is their leading platform, and about half of this generation are on Instagram. So how do we target Gen Xers? Well, you can offer them coupons and discounts. They are much more reluctant to splurge and will look for value for money in any product or service that they buy. Also, provide them with brand information. This generation does not move within the waves of trends and is more likely to purchase a product or service that benefits society as well as the environment. So position your CSI or environmental initiatives of your company through social media. Use age and lifestyle. So make use of life milestones for this generation and relate it to how your product or service can make it easier for them. This generation also tends to have a lot more privacy concerns. So particularly when you need to get their personal information, it means that it might not work as well with this audience. And small things such as having to create an account in order to purchase may mean that they bounce from your website. So in that instance, you might want to create a guest checkout. They might be more willing to buy. And finally, they listen to word of mouth. So again, because they are more likely to research a product, this generation will consider reviews before making a purchase decision. Making use of reviews on social media channels such as Facebook or Yelp, as well as other places like Google Maps and testimonials on your website will go a long way with this generation. And then we move on to one of the most spoken about generations on social media or on the internet, millennials. Millennials are also known as Generation Y and are mostly referred to as those born between 1981 to 1996. These users are considered the first digital natives as they are comfortable with the use of digital technologies and social media, having grown up with it. This generation spends about 2 hours and 38 minutes on social media daily. They are also entering their prime earning years and are more likely to purchase online than their predecessor. However, they tend to reject traditional advertising and are more resilient to other forms of advertising. Millennials are also looking to build relationships with brands. 84% of millennials follow brands on Facebook, and almost half of millennials follow companies and brands on Twitter, while 40% of millennials follow brands on Instagram and 76% of millennials follow companies on YouTube. So this also highlights the platforms that they are active on. They are also more likely to be active on more platforms than any other generation, especially because all these platforms were coming out at a time when they were growing up. So with a generation that is pretty numb to advertising, whether it's digital or traditional, how exactly do we target these millennials? First of all, be innovative. Millennials love anything new and trendy, so if you show them a new perspective of your product or service, they will most likely be interested and also follow you and share your information. You can also gather reviews. 68% of millennials will not make a purchase decision until they have discussed it with people they trust. They will also research a product online, so making reviews available to them is vital to your success. You can also offer them incentives. Providing discounts when users check in on social or share your product posts with their friends encourages them to participate with your brand and also share their own user-generated content. We spoke about that in lesson 1, and this is the audience that you want to target or you want to create user-generated content. And then there are also loyalty programs. This is probably one of the least brand loyal generations. With so many options available to them and being cost conscious, they will go for the best price and convenience. So they will switch brands without even thinking twice. But offering them a reward for being loyal, such as buy 10 coffees and get the 11th one free, And particularly if it can be integrated with a mobile phone, then even better, because this generation is extremely active on mobile. You can also target this audience through podcasts. Millennials are increasingly listening to podcasts, so either you can create your own and share it to social, or you can place ads in podcasts that are relevant to your product or service. This is a really good way to gain exposure. And then we have the babies of the Generation Z. And these are generally people that are born from the mid-90s and early 2000s to about 2015. They are fully fledged digital natives, and they are extremely familiar and comfortable with the internet, social media, and other technology. They have never known a life without technology. This generation spends about 2 hours and 55 minutes on social media daily. So we can see through the generations how the usage has increased. And they don't generally spend a lot of time on Facebook, Twitter, or Pinterest. They are more active on channels such as YouTube, Instagram, and Snapchat. So a younger generation is looking for more interactive content. But an omni-channel approach to digital marketing will definitely assist with this generation, so targeting them over email, phone, web, and in-person engagement. This generation also tends to have a short attention span, but they are great multitaskers. So that's why an omni-channel approach would be ideal, and video in particular would attract their attention. YouTube is a huge platform for brand discovery, with 56% of Generation Z reporting that they want video to reflect the products and services that they are specifically interested. So again, we've got trends coming up here of personalization, using video content, and being interactive. So you want to let them decide what to watch and when to watch it. This generation is also twice as likely to care about equality and 3 times more likely to care about how a business serves communities and society, as well as the environment. So make it known to them that you are having a positive impact on society, on the environment, and that you do care about what happens past just selling your product. So what are some of the tactics that we can use to target this audience? Gen Z love a brand story. They want to get involved with brands. They're concerned about social and environmental factors. And while they are loyal, they will not hesitate to switch brands if they feel that a company is not operating on an ethical basis. So tell your audience about your story and about your company's impact. Use influencers. This generation loves influencers and they love watching product reviews, but making it too much like an ad will definitely drive them away. So you want neutral reviews where both the pros and cons are provided and the viewer can make up their own mind. Make use of interactive content. This generation is one of the most experimental when it comes to social media platforms, using augmented reality, virtual reality, as well as interactive content will increase your audience engagement. This also links back to users wanting to be involved with brands and with their content. Cut out any fluff. With this generation, just get to the point. Don't beat around the bush and keep wording to a minimum. Answer the what, when, why, and how, because this generation has a limited attention span. But as I said, they are great multitaskers. And then finally, get your tech right. As we discussed, this generation has grown up around technology. And if you are driving your audience to a website or an app from social media, for instance, make sure it works. If they are finding the tech hard to use or they're waiting too long, they will leave without considering it twice. So make sure that you have your tech and your software working 100%. So just to put everything into perspective, let's just look at which generation uses what. On YouTube, we can see high usage rates from baby boomers all the way up to Gen Z. We also have Facebook, where the usage rates are lower, but they seem to be equaling out between the generations. We can obviously see, though, that YouTube, for instance, and Facebook, there is a much lower rate of usage for Gen Z on Facebook than there is on YouTube. And if we look at Instagram, we can see it dropping down a lot. You can see that baby boomers have the least usage on Instagram, as well as on Gen X. So we've said that this generation is not experimental, and they stick to the platforms that they know, which clearly would be Facebook. Also, YouTube seems appealing. We also have WhatsApp to stay connected. Again, baby boomers not really interested in WhatsApp, but your Gen Z and millennials are on there. And as you can see, there's a basically even spread between your millennials, as they are likely to be on multiple platforms. And then we have Twitter. So again, the highest ranking on Twitter would be Gen Z and your millennials. So here we can now start to connect our platforms with our various generations. So after last week's lesson on social media platforms and this week's lesson on target audiences, can you begin to connect the dots between your audience and what platforms you should be using to target them? I would love to know from you. If we look at our example of our smart TV, you can type your answers into Morpheus. How would you market your smart TV to baby boomers? Given the information that you have on the various generations and what platforms they're using, how exactly would you go about? You can just give me a few examples of what tactics you would use. You can type that into Morpheus. And then once we have an overview of our general audiences that we want to target for social media, we also want to take it a step further into something called a buyer persona. Does anyone want to hazard a guess at what exactly a buyer persona is? You might have a better idea now, having gone through target audiences. But again, a target audience is the overview, and we want to know what exactly the buyer persona is. Wonderful answers. Thank you so much. So a buyer persona is a semi-fictional representation of your ideal customer based on market research and real data about your existing customer. While you may know who your target audience is, breaking down your audience into buyer personas helps you to create relevant targeted content according to their specific needs, behaviors, and pain points. So this now comes all the way back to our psychographic and demographic factors that we discussed at the beginning of the lesson. A buyer persona can help you to inform marketing and sales strategies because buyer behaviors are changing fast, particularly with the rise of e-commerce and social shopping. Buyer personas can also affect the language and the designs that you use on your website or mobile app, with your checkout process, within your marketing, within your blog posts and social media marketing efforts to attract, inform, entertain, and retain those potential customers. It also helps with customer centricity. Businesses who are customer-centric are more likely to outperform their competitors. If you experience good customer service when purchasing a product, aren't you going to go back to that company? Aren't you going to be more likely to refer them to others and share their content if you think it will be useful to other people? It's the same with your business. Do what is best for your customer. You can also generate more high quality leads. So yes, while knowing your target audience and having an idea of the overall audience can definitely help, to target an exact persona who is more likely to purchase your product or service cuts out those leads who will never buy your product or service. Another reason that developing buyer personas is important is due to globalization. With the development we have seen in technology, not only enterprises, but even startups have the option to enter new markets internationally, but not having an understanding or knowledge of those different cultural, economic, psychological, or environmental factors can harm your business. And ultimately, it can do a lot more damage to your business and to your reputation. So it's important to take these factors into consideration. Let's take a closer look at the elements of a buyer persona. Within your buyer persona, you want to include your demographic factors that we identified within your target audience, such as gender, age, education, occupation, etc., as well as the psychographic factors like personality, lifestyle, hobbies, and interests. Only in this case, we're going to take a closer look at who this person specifically is within your target audience. And the difference between your target audience and your buyer persona is that you take the psychographic factors to the next level by looking at what their challenges are, their goals, their motivators, and their deterrents. Once I've gathered all of this data, I should have something that looks like this. This persona is a representation of one of my target audiences, and I would want to sell him a social media marketing course. So how exactly does having this buyer persona help me? All of this data tells me that he would want to do the course because he is in marketing, and I have an average of what his salary might be, so I know that he can afford it. Some other reasons that he would want to is I know that one of his goals is to start an agency or maybe to earn more in order to travel the world or buy a house. So he is motivated to upskill himself in order to change jobs or to start his own company. And these are all factors that I can use to target him when creating my social media content. If I look at his product adoption group, I can potentially upsell him on technology because I know that one of his interests is tech. I could also try and upsell him on design because as a modern day marketer, you definitely need to be multi-skilled in a variety of different areas. I could also target him for a business course because I know that one of his goals is to start his own business. And finally, I could even push it a little bit further to try and upsell him on a nutrition course because I know that he is passionate about his health and he is a vegan. So he might want to know how to eat correctly in order to get all his nutrients. However, I also have to bear in mind that he has deterrents, and these deterrents include cost, time, and access to internet. So in that case, I would try and create content to target those concerns, such as making him aware about the free trial, the potential discounts on a 12-month course, or the fact that he can watch lessons at his convenience and when it suits him. We also know what channels he uses as well as the content that he likes. So I would then use those channels with the types of content that would appeal to him while targeting him at the various phases of his buyer journey with different content using the various platforms. And this is how a buyer persona can really help you to identify what content you should be creating, what platforms you should be using, and what kind of either motivators or pain points you should be targeting when it comes to your specific audience. I know that this is a lot of information and you're probably thinking, how on earth do I get all of this data? But there are three main methods that you can use. First of all, we have data analysis. And this is the process of inspecting, cleansing, transforming, and modeling data with the goal of discovering useful information to inform and support decision making through quantitative research. We also have market research, which is the action of gathering information about consumers' needs and preferences through qualitative research. And if you're ever really, really stuck for information, there are also the Myers-Briggs personalities. This is a combination of personality traits that all people have, forming different psychological preferences. There are a total of 16 personality combinations. So let's look at each of those in a little bit more detail. I'm just going to touch on these points because we are going to do an in-depth buyer persona development process in Module 2. So when you're looking at data analysis, you can look at Google Analytics, social media channel analytics, as well as industry research reports. And then with regards to market research, you have surveys. You can run competitions in order for people to provide you with information and in return they get a prize. Or you can do an email campaign, which would probably run on the same basis. But it is always best to offer someone something in return for the information that they're going to provide you about your service or your brand. I'm sure that you've probably filled out some surveys in your life before, and that is used for market research. And then we have the Myers-Briggs personality combinations. We unfortunately don't have enough time to go through all of them now, but there is bonus content talking about the various personalities. If you are interested in knowing what personality you are, you can download your summary notes where you will find a link to the personality test. These are the 16 personality types. As you can see, they each have some key traits that define how they think and act. So let's look at a way in which these would be really helpful to you. So if I go back and think about Determined Dave, let's assume that he is maybe a protagonist. If I am battling to identify some of his personality traits, what I can then do is explore this type of person, and I can look at his strengths and weaknesses as well as his workplace habits. So then I know what kinds of content would appeal or what kinds of content might deter the specific person. So this information can really help you to flesh out what kind of person you are targeting and how to target them correctly in order to convert them. Just a little interesting fact here. Some protagonists that you may know include Daenerys Targaryen, Morpheus from The Matrix, Elizabeth Bennet from Pride and Prejudice, as well as the Oracle from The Matrix. We've got a little bit of a Matrix theme running here. But we are going to go into a lot of detail in Module 2 on developing your buyer persona. We're going to go through a step-by-step process to develop that persona together. That will be in Lesson 1 of Module 2. So if you're not entirely sure how to use these personas in the meantime, please don't stress about it. I would go and take the personality test because it's really quite a lot of fun. Let's move on and have a look at the customer journey. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, I would love to know how important you think the customer journey is. I know that you may not have heard about it before, and that's okay. If you have, however, heard about it, then give me a little bit more information about how important you think it is. You can type your answer into Morpheus, and I would love to know what your thoughts are on this topic. A customer journey can also be referred to as a buyer journey, as well as a purchase journey. And you may also have heard of the sales funnel or the marketing funnel. Ultimately, they are all referring to the same thing, just by a different name. Let's first have a look at the definition of what a customer journey is. So this is the complete sum of experiences that a customer goes through when interacting with your company and with your brand. This is just the way that I like to think about it. So we obviously have the awareness phase. Your customer cannot purchase a product from you if they don't know who you are. We then have the consideration phase, and this is where they're deciding whether to buy your product or go with your brand or not. We then have the purchase phase. So at this point, they've decided you're awesome. They make a purchase. But after that, you can't just let them drop off. You can't just take their money and then be like, okay, thank you, goodbye. You need to also consider the retention, as well as maybe even turning them into advocates. So we have awareness, consideration, purchase, retention, and finally, advocacy. With regards to the question that I asked earlier, how important do you think a customer journey is? For me, a customer journey is key in order to create the relevant, targeted content that I keep drilling into your brains. To give you a better idea of how we bring our audience, their journey, and the relevant content together, we need to understand the key social touch points throughout this journey. The percentages that we see for each of these age groups refers to how many people overall will participate in these specific journey points. So with brand discovery, for instance, 37% of millennials will go onto social media to discover brands. Whereas if we compare that to baby boomers, for instance, only 20% of baby boomers will go onto social media to discover brands. So you will notice that the purchase drivers, for instance, are the lowest amongst all the generations. So 13% of all baby boomers that are online using social media will respond to purchase drivers, whereas 25% of Gen Z or Generation Z will respond to purchase drivers. So you can take a closer look at the stats within the slides, but we just want to quickly link them up. So with brand discovery, you can see that that is obviously linked to their awareness. With product research, that is linked to their consideration of your brand. With purchase drivers, that is linked to whether they purchase or don't purchase. And then brand interactions. So this will then look at retention and advocacy. It's important though to bear in mind that these might all cross each other. So if I'm in the process of considering a brand and I then message a brand for brand interaction and I do not get a response, that is going to affect my consideration, and it's also going to affect whether I purchase that product. Let's take a look at what kinds of content would be linked to each of these. So knowing these social touch points throughout the customer journey, we need to have a look at what kinds of content we should be producing to target these generations throughout their customer journey. So if we start off with brand discovery, you could look at recommendations as well as comments on social networks and updates on your brand social network page, because people are looking for brands on social media. Types of content that you could produce for product research include microblogging, as well as actually using the social networks and using online pin boards. When we're looking at purchase drivers, we might want to provide our audience with the option to use the buy button on social networks. We may also want to generate lots of likes and good comments on social media, because this is going to then make them more interested and it might push them to purchase based on the opinions of other people. Remember what we said, our brands are not what we tell people they are anymore, it's what other people tell people they are. That was very confusing, but take a second to think about it. And finally, brand interactions. So when a user asks a question online or on a brand social network, that is a brand interaction, and you need to respond to those with some urgency. When a user clicks on a promoted or sponsored post on a social network, that is brand interaction. It shows that they are interested in your brand. If they have interacted with a brand message on social networking, or they've messaged you or used one of your chatbots, then they are showing interest. And also if they have shared one of your brand's posts, if they have shared if you have a share button on your website and they've shared that to social media. And then also if they have been driven to upload a photo or a video to a brand social network page, then you have user-generated content, which we spoke about in lesson 1. And then finally, visiting your brand's social network business page. That is an interaction. So you need to keep all of this in mind when creating your content, when posting to social media, when building your website, because this all affects your brand perception online and whether people sign up to your brand, are aware of your brand, consider your brand, purchase from your brand, and then also whether you can retain them and turn them into a brand advocate. And that is the ideal situation that you want through your social media marketing. And then I have a challenge for you. I would love for you to compile 1 to 3 target audience overviews, including the demographic and psychographic factors that we discussed in this lesson. You can do this in a Word document, and ultimately you of course don't have to do it, but you will need this for when you start the practical work on developing buyer personas and within your strategy development in module 2. So once you've done this, a lot of the work is complete and it'll be much easier for you to move through the modules that are coming up. You can email your audiences to marketing@shoreacademy.com. Coming up in our next lesson, we are going to be learning about the various elements that you need to consider in order to create a successful social media strategy. That is going to be one of the most exciting lessons ever. So I hope that you'll join me for that. But in this lesson, we learned what a target audience is, how to clearly define your target audience, identify your target audience. We learned about the various generations on social media. We also learned about buyer personas, what elements to include in that buyer persona, and the buyer journey. We are going to be going through all of this in a lot more detail as we get into module 2. This is just an overview so that you have the basics that you need for a successful social media strategy. Congratulations on completing lesson 3. I hope that you have learned a lot in this lesson. I hope that you can beautifully identify who your buyer personas are and your target audience. And please feel free to send us any feedback or suggestions. You can email us on support@shoreacademy.com. So I know that these lessons have been content heavy and possibly overwhelming, but it is important that you don't drop out. Every lesson builds on top of another lesson, and this will help you to achieve your goals. So stick with us. Thank you so much again for choosing to study with Shore Academy. You have completed lesson 3, and I will see you at lesson 4.